Hello and welcome to Neil Does Stuff. Today I am building another pedal from MusikDing.dee, music thing of the Germans. It is the Angel chorus kit because it's cheap as chips. It's €24 and I couldn't resist. I have an interesting relationship with chorus. I don't really like it. But as I get older, I realise that if you're a bit more subtle with it, then it can be quite good. So, here we've got all the stuff. We have a wee metal box, sometimes called an enclosure. We have Der Angel, which is German for the angel. Inside the angel, we have a bag of wires. We have PCB and a wee special PCB for the foot switch. That took me a wee while. We have a bag of chips, chip holders, transistors, LEDs and a bezel. We have some wee jelly button feet thing. We have a foot switch. We have bits for the back of the pots so that they don't touch the solder. We have ins, we have outs, we have 9V DCs, and we have some pots for speed and depth. We have some capacitors and we have some resistors. So I'll put everything aside apart from the resistors, the capacitors and our PCB, and I will populate the PCB. So the first thing we do is we'll check that we have the requisite resistors. The people at MusikDing are lovely and they write on the resistors what their values are, these being 10k, 220k, 1 mega, 100k, 2.2k, 4.7k, redness, which turns out it's a diode. There we are, and 470k. Now I am going to make sure that that tallies with what is on the bill of materials, the parts list. So 2.2k, 1 of, 4.7k, 1 of, 10k, 11 of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 100k, 1 of, 220k, 4 of, 470k, 1 of, 1 mega, 3 of, diode, 1 of. Right, so let's do the resistors in this bad boy here. What we do have to do is tally up what R1, how R1 relates to the ohm value. Okay, so I've got a PDF of the schematic. So R1 is at 1M. So if we fire this in here, this is what makes it like a jigsaw. It's fun. If only all those pensioners in old folks' homes doing jigsaws. That's a bit of an assumption. Knew the fun they could be having with pedals. So there we go, that's all the resistors on the main PCB. We have one resistor left which goes on the foot switch PCB, so I'm going to do that just because I can. Okay, so now we move on to the capacitors. Capacitors are a bit more complicated because it's harder to read them, and they don't have biro on them. They come in two types. They come in more than two, but I think there's two types here. We have these wee yellow ones, plastic ones, which are non-polarized. You can put them in any direction that you want. And then we have the wee classics, which are film capacitors, and they are polarized. So you need to put the positive leg in the round hole. The square hole. This PCB doesn't have square holes. It has a little positive sign beside the hole where that leg's going to go in. So confusingly, for the plastic capacitors, we have 8, which will be the 0.1 microfarad. So you can see a 0.1 on that. So that kind of makes sense. Then we have a 3.9 nanofarad, 39, what's that? 3.3, 33, what's that? And then we have 2 10 nanofarad capacitors, but we're only meant to have 1. So I might go back and regret how I have read these capacitors. We shall see. And that's us done with the capacitors. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the chip holders, the IC holders, the chips, a couple of transistors and a diode. I'm going to put the diode in last so I don't fry it. And then the board will be populated, and then the rest of it's trying to make it kind of work and fit into the, I nearly said box, the enclosure. So the IC holders, I've got a wee dunkel, and then there's the same image is shown on the PCB, and that makes sure that everything's in the right place. So now the transistors, they're really difficult because you've got to have amazing eyesight to work out, to recognise the numbers. But this one on it says JCJ112N21, so that'll be the J112. And then you're looking for the shape of the convex shape of the back of the transistor to marry up where all the legs are on the PCB. And then there is 2 of them, so they're not identical. 2 transistors I meant. So we've got another one. Looking at the schematic. So this one is VR1, and it says 78L06, and it says L7806 for those with phenomenal eyesight. And again, you're looking for that concave side, and it goes. So the last thing I'm going to do is the diode. The diode has a white line on it, and where the diode's going, where it says D1, also has a white line on it. So you marry those things up. Now, the diodes are one of the most sensitive of the components, which is why I'm putting it in last. And you basically don't want to heat it too much. They're not really worth anything, but you'll hear a wee pop if you fry it. And then once that's done, that is the board populated. Now that took me just under an hour. I wasn't really in a hurry. Why is C15 not got a capacitor on it? C15 is a 10 nano, which is where my extra 10 nano came from. So the bill of parts must have been wrong. Yes, the bill of parts has an error, for anyone that cares. So there we go, populated PCB. Haven't put in the ICs because they're also precious and potentially more expensive. Not in the grander scheme of things, but they're pounds rather than pence. And I'll clear up and then we start to do the things with the enclosure in the box. Hello, so here we are back again. A few weeks later, actually. Life is life. So I have my populated circuit board, which went fairly swimmingly. And now I'm going to attach it to the inputs, outputs, foot switch, etc. and stick it in the enclosure. So let's see how that goes. So looking at the instructions, we have a foot switch PCB, some wires, and then all our bits and pieces, ports, ins, outs. And hopefully, if I can get all that going where it's meant to go, we will end up with a chorus pedal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the wires into our PCB where they're meant to go. So we're going to start with the DC in, which is obviously hugely important. And I'm just following through the instructions. You take the wee ends off. Where is my... bin. Take the wee ends off. The wires are colour coded, which is quite a useful thing for following what's happening in the instructions. But you just put them where they're meant to go. Oh, soldering iron's not on yet, so that'll be a while. So I need a red, a blue, a black and a green. So that's me put all the cables onto the main PCB, and these will ultimately connect to the wee foot switch PCB. But just, I want to limit how long I've got to deal with everything being connected as I try to put it into, as I try to move it about. So I'm going to put some wires on the wee foot switch PCB. So there we go, we have the ins and outs jacks on. I could shorten these leads, but my experience with MusikDing is there's plenty of space in the enclosure. Some of these pedals, things get a bit tight and it could be quite annoying having big long leads. But when I've never done it before, I kind of prefer the problem of them being too long to them being too short, etc. So before we join these two together, I'm going to put the DC in on the end, or do I? No, DC in is going to go on once it's in the enclosure. That makes more sense because that's going to stay on the outside. So next up, I will put the foot switch on the foot switch PCB. So now I'm going to do the LED. The last MusikDing pedal I did, I got the LED a bit wrong, so I'm going to try and be a bit careful with it. So there's this bezel that holds the LED and looks quite nice once it's all put together. And the LED fits into that, so I'm having a bit of a dry run here. I actually bought some socket sets precisely for this job, which I'll get before I finalise what I'm doing. There we go, so that just kind of wedges in. And then that goes on there. And the legs go down. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So what I'm going to do is oh my god. Doesn't help, there's a wee extra hole in the black bit which it keeps on going into. Right. So I'm not going to solder that into the wee PCB yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look out my socket set. So I got this cheap socket set, they're reassuringly heavy, and most of them are far too big for pedals. You get wee hand crank ones, but these were actually cheaper. So there's wee plastic ones, presumably to prevent you breaking the components. But my trick is to identify the components that are expensive and then be careful around those ones. Far too big, far too small. Right, so there we go. So I might even be able to just do that by hand. I don't think that needs to be any tighter than that. But that's much easier than trying to get pliers or a spanner in there. That's absolutely solid. Anyway, that was a bit of an aside. So next I'm going to put the potentiometers onto the board before I attach the two boards together. There is wee bits for the back of the potentiometers, because they're going to go like that, and you don't want the metal of that to touch the back of the solders. So there's little black bumpers which are easy to lose if you're not looking out for them. So I need to work out which one is which. So it's not wonderfully clear which one is which, right? So you've got speed and depth. I'm going to have to go back to what am I trying to say? I'm going to have to go back to the schematic and work out which one's which. Speed is 100k. And I presume depth is 500k, but I'll be totally completist and make sure that I see it written down. Yes, depth 500k. So speed is going to go, yeah, there's a marker. I'm being daft. There's a marker where the back of it goes there. So speed is 100k, so it goes there, and depth is 500k, so they go like that. So you put the wee bumpers on them, and then I've done this wrong loads of times, such a simple mistake. They go in the bottom end rather than they don't go where all the other components go. They go in the back of the board so that they screw into the enclosure, and then when you open the enclosure, it's the components you see. So they're going to hold the PCB into the enclosure. Now, for reasons that I have never managed to fathom, there is a wee tooth that sticks up on these, and there always has been, and there always is. And you crack that off. I don't know whether it stops the potentiometer rattling about and taking in dust or becoming used in transit. But you take pliers and you snap it off like that. I'm always a wee bit, I with some trepidation, I am trepidatious, is that a word? I'm always a wee bit trepidalious when I've not read that in the instructions, because I don't actually know why you do that. I've guessed, but I've never been told that that's why. And I worry that it says, in this occasion, because it's a logarithmic such and such, such and such, you've not to click off the wee bit, but there we go. I am less trepidatious than I used to be. So, 100k in the speed, quadruple checked, 500k in the depth, less checked because the speed was right. And now I'm going to solder them in. So there we go, the pots are in. They are quite pernickety, but they're also quite rugged, and they don't really cost anything. So still to put the PCBs in that, but we're going to do that last so that we don't blow them up by doing some daft soldering mistake. So all that remains now is to connect these four colours to the four colours down there, and then I'll have this thing that I'm juggling, and then we're going to try and put it into the enclosure. So that's us. That's us theoretically all connected. There should be a battery clip. I don't know. I'll look back on my videos. I guess I've lost it. I don't really use 9-volt batteries, so I'm not going to put it in. It's easy to add at a later date. So I'm going to start with this LED, which I need to line up with the foot switch. So I'm going to make sure that that is the long legs like that, and then I'm going to click it into its wee bezel thing. And then I'm going to, I'm never quite sure which washers are meant to be on the outside and which ones are meant to be on the inside. I'll put one washer on the outside and one washer on the inside. Who knows? You may have noticed I don't really mind about aesthetics. So we slot that on. No, we don't. We take that out of the thing, right? so I'm going to put that in but not solder it, and then push the wee black bit down. I always get these wrong, which is why I'm trying to be a little bit careful. Oh, I've lost that plastic washer. I don't know what it's for and I've lost it. Let's put it on just in case. I'm looking at the ones that I've made. Sometimes they're on the outside, sometimes they're on the inside. I think we'll put that washer on the inside and put it on the outside. That's not the order that it came in, but here we go. Right, so, right, I'm hoping you can see this in the camera. I'm just literally pushing that little black bit down. I like the bezel, but I'm not quite sure how it works. Right, so we're going to put that there like that. If we put that on and then work out which socket to use. Too big, so what's that? That's 17's too big. 12 will be too small. 15. Is the answer. Right, so I'm tightening that by hand, and that's me going as far as twisting the foot switch. And there we go. Push that little black thing down. That looks good. Right, so I'm going to solder that in a wee second. I'm just going to make sure everything else goes in, because otherwise I'll regret it. Right, so that's going to go like that. Now, the DC 9V plug is quite annoying. So what you do with that is you thread the bolt onto those wires, and then you take the wires out of there, like some sort of children's game, and then I'm putting the ports into that hole, and then when we screw them on, or I'll have more room if I do the DC first. So that's what we're going to do. Should I have done these first? Let's put them roughly in. I have had some absolute horror shows. I'm really glad. Sometimes I regret that I didn't film my early pedals because I have so many hours of content. But sometimes I'm also really glad because there was some absolute disasters at my learning processes. Right, so if what was that? That was 15 for the jack, for the foot switch, sorry. It's 12, right? Yes, 12, right. So there we go. Just start to put this together in the way that so the trick is, and I never quite get it right, I think I've done quite well this time, is to put it in an order that doesn't make it awkward for you. There may be a better order. It probably tells you in the form, but if it does, I didn't read that bit. Because I arrogantly assumed I knew better. Okay. So, here's my theory. If we solder this on now, then we should have as much room as possible to attach that bolt on. So we're black onto that one there. I hate these wee plastic components. I'm sure for 50 pence more I could have something a bit more solid. So there we go. As I say, I hate these, right? So then we squeeze them through there, right? And we thread this bolt along. And then we can't use the socket set for this one. Oh, I can't get it to take the thread, it's always like this. At least this is a metal bolt, sometimes they're plastic. Right, what's it not doing? Right, there we go. Okay, we got there. Now, let's see if our potentiometers can fit in. There we go. Right, keep those wires out of the way. Potentiometers through they come, like little eyeballs in the holes. Can they both go through at once? Come on, so close. There we go. Right. Okay, so a washer and a bolt each. So if the ins and outs were 12, we're looking for a number lower than 12, of which there are 11, if we don't include minus numbers. Bet you all tuned in to find that out. So what's that? That is 11, is that? 11 is too large, so we're looking for 10. That's 14, which is not near 10. That's 9, which is too big. Where on earth is 10? 10, there we are. Okay. So that's looking quite positive so far. Now, I'm going to bend them over a wee bit. Oh, PCBs. Nearly forgot. Right, so there's a wee notch out of the end of the PCB. This one's easy because we've got a big PCB and a small PCB. And that's just gonna, there's a notch on the PCB. Maybe I should have done this sooner. There we go. That's quite reassuring. Right. So this one's not a notch, it's a dot. There we go. So hopefully that is in. And I'm now going to put the back on it. Is that in? There we go, that's a bit more like it. So there we go, done. I'm going to quickly plug it in, make sure it works. If it doesn't, I'm not going to do anything with it tonight. So soldering iron, etc. can go away. And we'll see what happens when I plug it in. There we go, it works in bypass. That's it, passed 2 tests so far, it works in bypass. And when you plug something into the input, the light comes on. Which that's with everything down low. So put everything to what might be roughly half. Doesn't seem to be working. I also didn't solder in the LED, but it is, did I? I can't remember. But it's working, so. Right, I'll take the power out. So there we go, problem solved. The LED wasn't, the LED that I was so careful with, I forgot to solder in. And then it was working, which means that the positive leg was connected, but the negative leg wasn't. So the foot switch wasn't doing the rest of the circuit. So, putting it to roughly halfway. We have chorus. We have no depth. We have depth. High rate. Low rate. High depth. Actually really nice. There's not huge extremes on it. that's me just going into the computer. There shouldn't be anything on that. There we go. Pretty easy pedal build. Not any huge problems, not just stupid mistakes on my part. I like the MusikDing ones. There's space, they're simple, they're cheap. They do what it says in the tin. So I will do a proper demo and review of this, which I will link to. I'll probably put it out first and then put this out, but there will be easy linking between the two.